The TCU Horned Frogs are 1-0. It was not the easy way to do it. It wasn't. It was very stressful. It was frustrating at times. We don't apologize for wins on Locked On Horned Frogs. But we are going to get into the positives and the negatives from tonight. It's Locked On Horned Frogs live post-game show. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. It is 1:20 in the morning in the Central Time Zone. Not sure if you're on the East Coast or West Coast or whatever, but it's late at night wherever you're living. And TCU is 1-0. They survived and beat Stanford 34-27. Sorry for anybody who bet the Frogs to cover. Looks like they were going to. Cam Cook had a late touchdown to push that lead to 10, and it was like, oh, wow, even with all this sloppy play, they're going to end up winning and covering, and then Stanford gets a late field goal to get it done. I'm going to be positive in segment one, and if you want to chime in on the chat, you can live on YouTube. I'll try to get to some of those throughout the show. You can also tweet at me at SimcoxSteven. If you've never seen this before, this is what we do on Locked On Horned Frogs. We do live post-game shows right after the ball game. It's irrational. It's emotional. And, yeah, it's just, hey, this is our reactions to the game, right? So I'm going to stay positive in segment one. And then in segment two, I want to talk about a lot of the frustrating aspects of this game and one really concerning overarching trend that's happening with Sonny Dykes' football team here at TCU, that if it doesn't get fixed, then, yes, we're looking at another long season. I'm seeing some of you chime in. Connor says, man, that was ugly. Can't play like that in league play. Sure. David May says Broughton played great at corner. We'll have another Thorpe winner if he keeps playing like that. I want to get to all those things. So let's start with the positives. Okay. Andy Avalos' defense tonight, they carried this team through the first 3 quarters of this ball game. Like, I would not have put that on my bingo card going into the game. If my prediction was 35-24, I guess it didn't end up being that far from what ended up happening. I thought it'd be a more comfortable win than how it played out tonight. But they had consistent pressure. How about Marcel Brooks, man? My goodness. I think he had 3 sacks on the night. Like, I thought Marcel was going to be more of a situational pass rusher, and he fits into that role in a fantastic way. Cooper McDonald, saw him pop at times. He made some big plays. Devin Deal with some tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Abe Kamara had some great tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Whether it was bringing blitzers or, the D-line and edge rushers themselves, they got to Ashton Daniels on a consistent basis. Now, Stanford's O-line is not very good. They're returning pretty much everybody from last year. They really struggled protecting the quarterback last year. But still, they did a fantastic job getting pressure. And, yeah, the corners, like, I came into this ball game thinking that I was really concerned about the corner position because we'd heard through fall camp that TCU wanted to allow their corners to play more on an island. A lot more press man coverage where they were going to be in one-on-one situations and they had to win. And Alec Aomenor is an NFL type of wide receiver, and he ended up with a pretty good stat line. Like, if you just look at the box score, I think he had 7 catches for 102 yards. But if you watch that ball game, which I know a lot of you did, you know that JT Broughton, the transfer from Utah, did an outstanding job against Aomenor. Like, he had this, he was doing the seatbelt celebration. Like, he had him locked up for a lot of the ball game. Aomenor had a really good drive towards the end of the game that actually gave Stanford the lead. But ultimately, like, on both sides, Lamarian James had some PBUs. They got play after play in the fourth quarter and in big situations to get off the field. So that was a big deal. John Martin says that quarterback was awful. Honestly, like, yeah, I don't think Ashton Daniels was fantastic, but I feel like he kept him in the game with his legs, and his passing line was not great. But I see your point. Bottom line is, I thought the TCU secondary held up a lot better than I personally expected. Timon Mitchell with an interception. That was cool. I mean, it was a weird play, right? Ball goes off Johnny Hodges' back, and he's just there at the right time. But they did force a turnover, opportunistic. That's awesome. I mean, really, that entire third quarter, like, you kept waiting for the offense to get into gear. And they got great field position at times. It's like, all right, this is the chance for the offense to really get going. And they couldn't do it. But the defense kept coming up with big stops. And I think that's a great thing for TCU and their prospects moving forward, that, it's Stanford, right? But in a game where you're adjusting a new scheme and doing a lot of things on the fly and going up against an offense with some playmakers, you held up really well. Honestly, like the J.P. Richardson fumble, that was one touchdown. The first drive of the game, goodness gracious, man. This is not really an exaggeration. They basically let Stanford march down the field just via penalties. And that's got to get cleaned up. And I'm going to get more into that later. Jacob Saylor says the quarterback pressure was so noticeable. It was. It was night and day. Even if they weren't getting to Daniels, and there were some times where they over-pursued and he broke contain and made some plays, that's got to get cleaned up too. But it was just there all night long. They were either disrupting the timing of the routes, disrupting the throwing angles, or getting the quarterback. And that's a great thing. Also, the rushing attack. Yes, you have to figure out a way to keep quarterbacks from running all over you. Ashton Daniels ended up having 87 yards on the ground. But when Stanford tried to line up and run the football in a traditional manner, they couldn't do it. Cedric Irvin had 5 carries for 24 yards. Micah Ford, 10 carries for 20 yards, 2 yards per carry. Justin Lampson had a touchdown, and he was their Wildcat quarterback. But when they tried to just run the ball in the standard way against that front 6 or front 7 that TCU put out there, the Frogs held up really well. So I was super impressed with Andy's defense overall. Positives on the offensive side. I thought Josh Hoover overall had a really good game. His stat line, 28 of 42, 353 yards, about 9 yards per completion, and 2 touchdowns. I don't know where Eric McAllister and Dalen Wright were tonight. They weren't on the field a whole lot. So I'll look maybe here in a minute if I have a chance at Sonny's post-game comments and see if he says anything about it. But that was weird to me. You heard all about those guys in fall camp, and I know there's always kind of a bait and switch with that stuff when the game actually starts, but that was very odd that they didn't get on the field. But from a receiving standpoint, hello, Jack Besh. That's a guy that we've heard about a lot. And sometimes, you can get into this – sometimes you have, practice all-stars. And what I mean by that is guys that, you hear about them all off-season. Hey, this guy's really playing well for us. We like what he brings to the table. And then the game actually starts. The games start. He doesn't get that many opportunities. But to Sonny's credit, he said – I think Jamie Plunkett brought this up during the game. He was like, man – Sonny Dykes said that Jack Besh was their offensive MVP during spring practice, and he showed up in a huge way. Let me get the stats up here and switching tabs. Sorry for some of the delays. 6 catches for 139 yards and a touchdown. Had basically the game-winning touchdown in the corner of the end zone. Made some huge plays over the middle, and it was really all from the slot. I was very curious to see where they were going to line him up, maybe an H-back or kind of more of a tight end role. No, he was doing a lot of that work from the slot receiver position, which was intriguing to me, and I think that was cool. Savion had some drops tonight. There was a stretch in the second half where he kind of got in his own head, and that was frustrating. But I liked when they motioned him into the backfield, or I guess into that quarterback spot. They ran that play in the red zone where he came in at QB. He faked the reverse to Josh and got around the edge for 5 or 6 yards. I would love to see him in more situations like that just because I think he's so big and physical that he's going to get positive yardage. And that first drive, he really dominated, had the touchdown catch, had a couple other catches on that drive. So that was nice to see. Cam Cook, it was an up and down game. Somebody earlier, I'm kind of getting lost in the YouTube comments, sorry. David May said Hoover only had 2 or 3 bad throws. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Now, they didn't stretch the field a whole lot tonight, right? It was very much within 10 to 15 yards at most, but to his credit, he made good decisions. He didn't make risky throws, and guys were running open, and he got him the ball, which is what you want him to do. This offense is supposed to be pretty quarterback friendly, so I think they want that to be the key. Cam Cook in the second half was really good. 12 carries for 59 yards in the second half, had that touchdown to seal the ball game, so that was good to see. About how earlier he had a fumble. And I'll get to that more in segment 2. Had the fumble in the red zone right before halftime, which was a killer. And it looked like Josh was very demonstrative, probably the most demonstrative I've seen Josh Hoover since he got the job, which I think was good because it felt like that was a quarterback taking ownership of his team. And he was trying to show Cam the way that he was supposed to either take that handoff or that fake. He didn't expect him to move a certain way, and that caused a fumble. And somebody also said, like, why are they hurrying up in that situation? I don't know. They're just always going to do that. I don't like it either. I don't love the, get 30 yards and then sprint up to the line. I think in a lot of cases, you just throw your own offense into whack and it doesn't create good plays. But they did that there. They ended up fumbling the football. And because of that, they trailed at halftime 17-10 when they had a chance to tie it up after a great throw to Jack Bech. Offensive line-wise, I think they did a good job in pass protection. I don't have the number of sacks that Stanford got in front of me, but overall, it felt like it was a pretty clean pocket. Now, a bunch of RPOs, a lot of getting the ball out quickly, but that's part of this offense. The running game was a struggle, and it still feels like they can't really run unless there's a light box or there's some sort of misdirection. They had some success with that kind of counter draw play tonight where it's like, all right, we're acting like we're passing the ball. We're all moving this way. And then Cam Cook comes the other way and gets it done. But it just, again, interior O-line running straight ahead, that was a problem. And that being a problem against Stanford, not super encouraging, but it is week 1. So we'll see if they can cook up some things to get better on that front. Okay. Positive-wise, I'm trying to think of anything else that I had. I talked about the corners. I talked about the pass rush. I mean, overall, I just really loved the intensity and effort from the defense tonight was noticeably different. Like they were bringing – now, sometimes it was reckless and it caused penalties. Joe says Stanford had 2 sacks tonight. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, overall, they did a pretty good job of keeping Josh clean. The effort on defense was great, and they were physical. They were tackling. Not a ton of missed tackles tonight. Like I felt like that was a lot better. Now, you got to clean up some of these penalties, and you can't let teams march down the field on you. Like a lot of the penalties were guys being aggressive, and so I can live with it, but the details have to get honed in. I mean, overall, though, man, like I don't really think you could ask for a better debut for that defense, given some of the bad situations they were put in and the fact that they're installing a new scheme and everything that comes with that. Okay, we got the positives in. I want to take a quick break here, and then we're going to discuss my biggest frustration tonight, which was just the mental mistakes, the penalties. All that's coming up here in a moment here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's a live post-game show, your team every day. I'll quickly tell you about our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONCFP to receive 20% off your order. You can order 12 packs or 24 packs online. They have all kinds of flavors. You can build your own. Do it today. 5 Hour Energy, not just in convenience stores now. It's also online. Who knew? All right, so a win is a win, okay? 1-0 is 1-0. We'll take it. All the cliches. Right. Earlier, I saw Jacob Saylor say in the chat, and I'm seeing a lot of you say, Big Easy says too many penalties. But Jacob said, if they play a clean game, then they win probably like 44-7. My pal Matt Jennings, freelance writer, he tweeted in the third quarter during that stretch where like TCU had the chance to take the lead but couldn't do it. TCU was almost doubling up Stanford on a yards per play basis. If they could just be marginally better in high leverage situations or avoid them entirely, they'd be running away. So another positive from tonight. Now, it's Stanford. It's on the road. It wasn't like a raucous environment, but the offense, when they had to have a huge drive, they did it. That's Josh Hoover's first game-winning drive in his college career. The 2 games that he won last year, he won by 38 points and 27 points. And he played well in those ball games. But in a couple of the one-score games where he had opportunities to get the team back, that wasn't something that him or the offense did well last year. And they did it tonight. Like, big plays, throw over the middle of Jack Bech, and another throw over the middle of an RPO, J.P. Richardson. He gets down the field, hits Jack Bech in the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. It was quick. It was efficient. They got it done. And they were efficient in the red zone in that scenario, which is awesome. So that's a huge key. My bone to pick tonight is with Sonny. And, yeah, I have issues with the play calling. I think in the red zone, it's too cute. I also feel like that's still sort of an offensive line problem, but at some point it's got to get fixed and it's got to get better. But for Sonny Dykes, if your whole thing, so every coach excels at something, right? Like every coach has something that they hang their hat on that they're going to make the identity of their program. For Gary Patterson, for years, he was a defensive play caller. He ran a very innovative defense, and he was the head coach on that side of the ball. And then his grit and toughness permeated throughout the rest of the team. And so they had, at their peak, they had great mental toughness. They were physical. They got after it. They played good complementary football, but defense was what ran the show. Okay? Sonny, early in his career, my view of him was air raid tree guy, innovative offensive mind, and he had that side of the ball down. Now it seems like he has transitioned to a place where he is CEO, a vibes guy, culture guy. So he's going to hire talented people. He's going to empower them to do their jobs. He's going to let the players kind of be themselves and hope that, they lead really well. Like he has good player leadership and that kind of goes through the team. And he's a laid back dude by nature. That's all fine. There's a lot of ways to do this job. There's a lot of different types of people that are successful. And I'm sure I can think of more. Like one sort of CEO coach that is out there right now is Dion at Colorado. But Dion at Colorado, when he goes into somebody's living room, a five-star player, he holds a lot of cachet, right? He brings in a ton of talent. He brings in guys like Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. So if Sonny's whole thing is going to be like, I'm CEO guy, I kind of keep my hands off a lot of the nuts and bolts and play calling and strategy, and I'm like game management, culture. If that's going to be your thing, you cannot have 100+ yards in penalties. Okay? It just can't happen. And I would love for tonight to just be like, well, we can write it off because it's week one and things are wacky and weird and it's sloppy at times. I would love to say that. But there were too many games last year where this was the case, whether it was penalties or what we saw tonight, drop passes, mental mistakes that just led to bad moments, like a huge swing in that ball game. And I hate to pick on individual people, but JP Richardson drops that pass. From the TV angle, it looked like if he caught it, he had a blocker out in front and he would have got a first down. Then Kyle Limmerman missed a field goal, and suddenly Stanford goes down and scores a touchdown. Think at worst you'll have a 6-point lead, but instead you end up trailing by 4 points. Now, it ended up being a moot point because TCU drove down and scored, which was great. But all those detail things that they did so well 2 years ago, they failed at last year. A huge part of this offseason, at least from what they were saying, was that they were going to get better at it this year. It did not show. It did not show up in game one. But to their credit, when they had to have a big Stones drive at the end of the ball game, they got it done, right? And that does mean something, like survive in advance does mean something to a certain extent. But I'm blown away by the lack of discipline. And somebody said, Jonathan said the defense looks like they were playing too fast in that first drive. Yeah, that's probably a good way to describe it. I mean, I get it. A lot of those penalties were aggression-based, which I like because it means the defense is playing with a lot of fire and energy and enthusiasm. But let me pull up the play-by-play here because this is not hyperbole. Like the entire drive was penalties. I know you guys know this because you're watching it. 3rd and 13 at the 8-yard line, pass interference, extends the drive. 3rd and 18 to the TCU 46. Ashton Daniels gets sacked, but face mask penalty gets them another first down. On 3rd and 19, Ashton Daniels runs for 31 yards. Now, a huge thing that was super positive is in the second half, like defense really struggled on 3rd and 4th down in the first half. Second half, that improved, which is awesome. And again, like big drive by the offense to go down and score, and then the defense. Late in that ball game, Stanford's trailing by 3, and they got a chance to go win the game or tie it, and they they gave up -6 yards. Like they made back-to-back plays to force 3rd and 10, got a sack to force 4th and 16, got another incompletion to get the ball back to the offense. That's huge, man. That's big situational football. That's awesome. I have no idea what that play call was on 1st and goal when they threw the ball. I was upset. It looked like an RPO, so I guess I'll give the coaching staff maybe the benefit of the doubt in that I think Josh probably made that read. But I don't know why you're running any sort of situation where you're throwing the ball there. And so Andy Swaim reached out to me on Twitter and was like, well, I like the idea of taking a kill shot. Okay, here's my thing. I think as a coach, you have to understand every week and every game is kind of its own thing. So the way that game was playing out, your defense was carrying you for the most part. So I think you run the ball 3 times. They ended up scoring, so it doesn't matter. But I think you run the ball 3 times. You force Stanford to use all their timeouts. And you give them the ball back with 80 – at worst, you get the ball back with like a minute 20 on the clock and kick the field goal and you force them to go score a touchdown with no timeouts and a little over a minute to go, right? So I don't know what that was about, but I was pretty dumbfounded by that play call in that situation. However, they got a victory. And, there were plenty of games last year where in situations like that, they would have folded and they wouldn't have come up with big drives like that or big plays when they had to have it. So I will take that as a positive. Now you transition to basically your controlled scrimmage against Long Island and you take care of business there. You get UCF in a couple weeks. You got a lot to clean up between now and then, but you have some time to do it. And I'm really salivating at the idea of, I don't know what his timetable is, but if Paul Olawale is healthy and can be effective as a pass rusher with his hand on the ground, along with those guys at stud linebacker that were fantastic tonight, hey, man, let's go. Let's get it going. Red zone efficiency, offensive efficiency has to be better. But so much of it, to me, comes back to the fact that you have to run the ball. Like, you have to run the ball in situations where people expect you to run the ball, okay? It's cool to catch people off guard and run against light box, all that stuff. When it comes down to it, everybody in the building knows you're running it. You have to still be successful in those scenarios. We'll take one more quick break here, come back and finish things up. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. All right, eBay Motors, if you need a part for your car, whether you're trying to keep it just running or you're trying to level it up to peak performance, millions of parts for your MVP, go to their website, and they have the eBay Guaranteed Fit program where you put the make and model of your vehicle in, you find the parts you need, you put it in the shopping cart, and it will tell you yes or no, this is right for your car. eBay Motors, millions of parts for your MVP. Win every time with parts that fit your ride. That eBay Guaranteed Fit program is only available to U.S. customers. Yeah, some people have been commenting on it and asking me about it. Haas Haney played tonight, which was interesting. I said this offseason, I was like, I think he needs to get in there and be someone who they can use in certain situations and at least have a package of plays for him. And then talking to some people who were close to the team, including Jamie Plunkett, who came on our show a couple weeks ago, he said, yeah, cautious, adjust your expectations. I think they're definitely going to try to keep his red shirt open. But he came in the game tonight. He handed off the ball. He had an 8-yard run, and then he unfortunately suffered a leg injury. Don't know the extent of it, but I did see a tweet that he was hobbling around a little bit on the sideline. So that stinks, man, because I think the fact that he was playing in your season opener, and sure, maybe it was just like, hey, we got to do something to kickstart this offense. But that game was in the balance. I just think if they're playing with really redshirting, that was a very strange time to put him in the ball game. But maybe it was. Maybe that was just like, hey, we want to get him some opportunities, in 4 games, and this was one where they could do it. Yeah, I was super impressed with. Again, I don't know what the deal was with Dalen Wright and Eric McAllister tonight. But I think when the passing game, like when the receivers weren't dropping passes, they really did what they wanted through the air. And Stanford's defense was bad last year, but it still was good to see that things, for the most part, looked like they were in rhythm it's just a matter of cleaning up some of those things and getting better on offense as you move forward. A lot of you are commenting. I appreciate you joining me tonight. We're going to wrap things up here. We'll have more shows. I'll have a show on Monday on Labor Day, and we'll get ready for Long Island moving forward. TCU is 1-0. If you miss some of this, you can rewatch it here in a minute. Frogs are 1-0. Okay, Ben says Sonny says Dalen and JoJo were banged up at the end of camp. That's why Besh got the start on the outside. Okay, that's good information to know. So injuries there played a difference. Well, Jack Besh might have got himself a spot because he was their best receiver tonight, and it wasn't really close. So that was cool to see. We'll be back on Monday. Thank you for rocking with us on the post game. TCU After Dark. I appreciate it. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every single day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast.